She was stabbed once by him, yet she remained upright. Still, he stabbed her twice. She waited. By the seventh blow, she was bleeding out on her knees in the middle of the road, her arms encircling the terrified dog like a mother protecting her. "Child," she exclaimed, "run," to the dog rather than to anyone. She refused to let go because, in her opinion, saving the life of that war-torn dog was worth sacrificing her own. And even as the attacker fled into the distance, she said, "It all started that morning." Leila Monroe, a nurse at the VA hospital, had just completed a grueling 16-hour shift. Her eyes were heavy, her back arched, and she was already thinking of a peaceful lunch and some much-needed rest. However, the clinic doors sprung open as she reached for her luggage. A scruffy old man with a bleeding German shepherd in his jacket staggered in, hardly standing. "Please," he pleaded in a shaky voice. "They want to put him down after he saved my life abroad." A ex-military working dog, Shadow was alert, scarred, and had eyes that never left his handler's face. Leia let everything fall. In a whisper, she hurried them both into an examination room and said, "He's safe now." Despite her uncertainty about the veracity of that, something in her chest wouldn't let go, even if she wasn't meant to treat animals. She wiped the blood from Shadow's ear, began suturing the wound on his leg, and looked for any fractures. She called him right away and registered him under the veteran's name as a temporary support companion. She didn't care that it was against the rules. It was not a thing. A soldier was there. Early in the afternoon, problems started to arise. When he arrived, a man wearing a black jacket, frigid documents, and steely eyes demanded custody of the dog. He clarified that Shadow was still government property until an investigation was conducted. He said firmly, "This animal isn't yours to keep. He comes with me." With her hands steady and her voice low, Leia stood between him and the dog. "He's not evidence, he's family." The man's face remained unchanged. "Then you're obstructing federal action." She didn't recoil. A dot. She shadowed the back exit and escorted the veteran in a matter of minutes. Although she had bought them some time, she realized it wouldn't deter the man for very long. They made their way to the veterinarian's modest rental house in the area in silence, but halfway down the street, tires began to screech. The man had trailed behind. A dot. Nobody anticipated a knife. After yelling once, he charged. The veteran was pushed aside when he attempted to intercede. Shadow grew and rushed, but Leia chose not to run as his injured leg buckled. As a human shield between the dog and the sword, she flung herself over it. Without hesitation, 5 stabs. Blood was streaming down her light blue scrubs as she fell to the sidewalk, barely conscious, but she held on. She coiled closer to Shadow's body and muttered, "You're okay," despite her clouded vision. "I've got you." Before anyone could stop him, the assailant took off. 911 was phoned by neighbors. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. Leia was hurried to the operating room. Until they let him curl up next to her gurney, Shadow would not leave her side. He would cry from inside the ER doors and bark at everyone who attempted to relocate him. But that was not the end of the story. A Fotila was rendered unconscious on a bloodstained stretcher by a nurse, with Shadow faithfully resting by her feet. Nobody anticipated how quickly that photograph spread. It arrived at a private military forum in a matter of hours. Shadow was instantly recognized by one of the SEALs who had served with him. Next came another, and by dusk, the hospital parking lot was starting to fill with black SUVs, motorcycles, and the quiet footfall of men who didn't have to reveal their identities. They traveled from neighboring cities and distant states. More than 200 Navy SEALs and veterans demonstrated outside the hospital within 7 hours of the stabbing, but not in protest. They occupied the hallways in defense. They looked into security. In order to complete Shadow's adoption into the veteran's care, one brought legal documentation. A medal bearing the inscription, "For those who serve without asking why," was brought by another. A third gave a sealed letter to the front desk. "A complete scholarship for Leia's daughter is enclosed." Leila barely survived, if something were to happen to her. Even though she had internal bleeding, 2 shattered ribs, and 1 collapsed lung, she managed to survive when she woke up, still feeling dazed from the drugs. She spoke in a whisper at first. "Is the dog doing well?" He was sitting next to her bed, his gaze fixed on hers, his tail waving softly. He was still standing. It was not for recognition that she had done it. She hadn't considered the repercussions. She simply noticed something valuable. And before her intellect could move, her body did. The whole brotherhood of warriors turned up as a result, not because she was one of them, but rather because she demonstrated in that one act of selflessness that she fully understood what they stood for. Therefore, true heroes don't don uniforms or even capes. They occasionally don scrubs. The proper people always notice, even if they don't have a headline. If you were moved by this tale, please subscribe for more inspirational tales of bravery. Click like and forward this to someone who thinks there is still hope for bravery in this.